This is TWiT.
Net neutrality is back in the news this week. Talk a little bit about what's happening with the Net Neutrality Day that is being planned by some companies this week.
Yeah, it's the Net Neutrality Day of Action, and it's scheduled for Wednesday. So we find ourselves in this place because FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, a Republican, is trying to undo the work during the Obama administration to subject internet providers to very strong utility-like regulation in order to protect net neutrality. Pai has a much different approach in mind, and he thinks that what Democrats did is a little too heavy-handed, but tech companies and consumer advocates really prefer the Obama administration's approach. And to that end, they're launching something of a protest on Wednesday. Some of the biggest companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Snapchat, and others plan to rile their users in any way they can to get them to sound off with the FCC, and the hope that maybe the FCC is going to change its mind and might reverse course and not pursue Pai's plan. Now, let's be real, that's not going to happen. Pai, a Republican, has a Republican majority at the FCC, and for a very long time, he's promised he was going to undo the Obama administration's rules. But I think the plan on the part of the tech industry now is to show that net neutrality is a popular issue in the hopes that maybe someday Congress might get involved and might deal with this issue once and for all with a more lasting legislative solution.
So you did a great interview with Ajit Pai. I mean, before I listened to your interview, it was, you know, he's really been painted as this evil villain that's coming in, you know, to destroy net neutrality. And he had a lot of good points. Of course, he's the FCC chairman, so we would hope that he would be able to communicate well, which he did. But I mean, he brought up a lot of points about how a lot of people in the press are saying, like, he's getting rid of these laws that we've appreciated for so long, but really it's only been since 2015. And you know, what those people against those people for net neutrality are really talking about internet fast lanes and talking about something that hasn't come to pass yet and might not. What do you say to that?
Well, that was sort of part of the point. You know, FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler felt that there was a need to have bright line rules on the government's rule books that said what companies could and couldn't do, fearing that if it were the Wild West, that you would see a world in which companies might charge for online fast and slow lanes, as folks put it. But Pai felt that the mechanism that the government used was too heavy-handed. Really, what we're talking about here is a fight over the exact portion of law that we're using to address net neutrality. With Wheeler, he took internet and broadband providers and began to treat them as telecom services under a portion of law known as Title II. It's pretty wonky, but you'll hear the word Title II thrown around a lot in this debate, which essentially subjects these broadband providers to old school telephone regulations. And the FCC went out of its way to exempt them from some of the most onerous regulations, like rules that might allow the FCC to regulate the rates that they charge consumers. But Republicans in the telecom industry really just saw it as a down payment on even greater regulation of the internet community, that it would lead the FCC under perhaps different Democratic hands to start to try to regulate internet service providers even more than they currently do. But you know, we find ourselves in this place because we've gone through multiple iterations of court battles over what authority the government really has to address net neutrality. And we're already looking at a potential court challenge with whatever Pai ultimately adopts at the end of this debate. We're still a while away from the actual end of this debate. But when Pai has a plan, it will probably land in the hands of a court. And that's why we're having all these conversations about Congress. Somebody probably has to issue a final lasting solution. Otherwise, we're going to keep talking about protests and FCC rulemakings and wonky things of the sorts for many years to come.
I mean, do you think, you know, I'm not saying it's always good to protest and show what you believe and stand out there, I believe. But, I mean, they already have the votes. I mean, do you think that there is any chance that Ajit Pai is going to change his mind? I mean, are we just expecting, like, the same thing that happened with Tom Wheeler, that, like, John Oliver and all the, you know, regular people can change another FCC chairman's mind?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Michael Beckerman, who's the leader of the Internet Association, a lobbying group that represents the likes of Facebook and Google and Twitter, he said the same thing. You know, there's no reason not to raise your voice. It would be like showing up expecting the game to, you know, change course without you having any sort of effect on it. Like you have to raise your voice, especially because I think these folks recognize that if they can build strong political support and build a broad enough base of supporters that it might help them in a coming battle in Congress, or it might help them in a coming legal battle, as they point to the popularity of this program. Whether or not that's effective, another conversation entirely, but that's at least their thinking. Whether it sways Pai is another question, because Pai has made it clear since 2015 that he didn't want to reclassify broadband providers. He didn't want to use Title II for net neutrality. And while he served as a commissioner at the agency at the time, he voted against it. So did his fellow Republican, Commissioner Michael O'Reilly, who's still there. And the third, soon to be nominated and confirmed Republican, Brendan Carr, believes the same. He's worked for Ajit Pai. The votes are already there to take down Title II. Now, what Pai ultimately replaces it with is something that remains to be seen. That's the process we're working through now. But Title II is gone. There's no reason they're going to keep it. This has been the signature thing for Pai and Republicans. And, while it's important to get folks' voices heard at the FCC, there's only so much I think they're going to be able to do at this stage of the debate.